All right, so this is just a short demo on how I would recommend using Clip Studio. To start with, like, look at a lot of artists. I think Clip Studio is great for making comic-based work. And this is Junji Ito, does really wild horror manga from Japan. Chris Ware, nice straight lines, color, flat color. Charles Burns, this sawtooth-like marks, straight up just black and white usually, right? And I think even some artists like Sue Williams, some of Sue Williams' works, Takashi Murakami, make a lot of sense working with Clip Studio. There's also this guy, if you're looking for extra brushes or just some thoughts on how to use Clip Studio, I recommend checking out Ray Frendon. So here's Clip Studio. How I would set up first is a few things. I'm gonna go to Preferences under Interface, and I would always work with the dark color theme. I think the light color theme is too bright, so I'd always use that. I'm using a tablet. That's I'm not drawing directly on the Cintiq. It's mirrored to the. It's not mirrored to the monitor, so I'm not going to draw as well. The second thing I'd recommend is scanning in drawings. Like, if you want to be a drawer, if you want to be an illustrator, you have to draw all the time. You have to draw not just digitally, but on paper. And a lot of my personal ideas, I think, come better, faster, looser on paper than they do digitally. So here's a sketch that I then turned into this, right? And so I thought I'd kind of go over how I do that process. So yeah, I had a little sketch because that's how I make my ideas in my sketchbook, and maybe I make some like little improvements on the face in the sketchbook. So I like this, but I want this sort of face. Is kind of how I'll work. And just the idea to make like a t-shirt. I should probably make this arm a little bit wider is what I would do. So what I do first is I, of course, scan these drawings in, and then I'm going to turn down the opacity of them. Then I work with a new layer, and I would recommend working with pencils, and I would also recommend working with the way that illustrators and drawers have been drawing forever, is with this blue pencil. Now this is, I don't know, I like doing this just because for one, because it's different color than my pencil line of my sketch, and it's how they used to do it. It looks good. It works for me. And so I'll use this sketch stage to really play around with how the things should look, right? I'm really loose. My finger is always over when I'm doing the brushwork, the parentheses, the open and close parentheses to make my brush smaller or larger. I never go over here to change the brush size because it takes way too long. I think it's a good habit to like make sure you're kind of normally drawing most of the time at the sort of size that you would be working on, right? So instead of worrying about, zooming in so far and worrying about all these little pixel details, it's good to come in here sometimes, but quite often I think it's good to just stay out, make decisions out here and just live with them and change them, right? So I would build up like a sketch stage, and let's say I like this, but then I want this. I would just move this guy over and either, trace over, scale it, change it, look at it over here. It doesn't matter. I don't think there's any right or wrong way to do that. So I get the sketch stage done. I might even turn this opacity down further so I can kind of understand what's going on, right? So the opacity of this layer is really low. I could even turn that off after I get this layer done. And then I'll work with another layer that I can start to do my inks in. And so if you like, I'll show you how kind of like, so Charles Burns, how he has these like really nice sawtooth marks. You can get those really nicely in Clip Studio. And so I use the G Pen for that. Works really well for me. Grab a different color. I'll zoom in a little bit here. And I'll turn down the opacity of this pencil line layer so I can kind of look at this. And so when you're working with the G Pen, you just, you make marks, and you make marks fast and loose, and then you can come back and fix them, right? And so it's just a matter of like learning that. And again, I'm not working how I normally work. I'm not looking directly at the Cintiq. I am separated from how I normally draw. So it's a little bit different for me, right? But yeah, the G Pen is great. You can get these really nice sawtooth marks that you know, you can play around with to get better sensitivity that way, right? And then you can just, you know, grab white to come in here and fix it. Or you can set up your eraser to work in a way that makes sense. So right now my eraser is kind of small. So I can go to the eraser and go to hard. And that will look somewhat similar, make it the same brush size. It doesn't matter. If it's easier for you just to switch colors, that's what I would do. And if I was working with this G Pen, I would absolutely just do that. Like, I have a button on my pen, and I can just come in here and make marks, right? And then switch out to white and come in here and cut into it to bring it back. All right. And once I get that done, then I'll normally like do some fill colors. So I could make another layer, pull that underneath. And if I'm going to colorize, I would just switch to a color, right? And, you know, do whatever, colorize. There will be some issues here where the white, like if you don't want that, I can show you how to take care of that there. So let's turn this guy off. And let's go to this layer. All right, so what I'm going to do is, actually, let me see if I can show you what the problem is. Let's see here. Well, whatever, I'll just make a new layer so you can see. Yeah, so there's the white. So you can see the problem with the white and the black. And so there's a variety of ways to take care of that. Let's see, let me turn off this background so you can see what's going on. And so I'm just going to select that, right? So now I have a color gamut of all the black and not the white, right? And then I could make a new layer and I can fill this with a color. Let's try that again. I had a right, and so now that's removed, right? Easy step, and then now that white is gone. Let me go back and turn off this so you can see what's happening. Right, so now we're back to coloring. And yeah, this is it, right? Come in here, pen tool, color, right? Quickly. It's pretty straightforward. I'm using the G Pen and just a big brush. If you want to get into oil paint, this is a great part to get into it when you're colorizing your line work. And so play around with oil paint, right? It's a nice way to like make more modulated color spaces. So you can easily paint one. You don't have to, of course, you don't even have to use the line work, right? You could just work with color shapes, oil paint. And it's a nice way to get this blended effect. And then once you're done with that, you can also help blend it using this blend tool right here. And you can help even further blend that out. It's really nice, really straightforward. It's a great way to work with oil paints. Another thing that's great is to also change the color of your line work. So not just to have black if you decide to work in color. How you can do that is I'm on this layer with the line work on it, and I'm going to do what's called a transparency lock, which is right here. And with this transparency lock, then I can come in here with maybe like a brown, and I'll switch back to pen tool. I just press P, and then I can come in here and paint my line work. So now it's not black, it's brown to maybe match that, the underlying color that I'm using. If this is not on, this transparency lock is not on, then any marks you make will obviously show up as new marks. Maybe make it smaller. And so yeah, I would just come in here and just play around, like make some sketches, look at your sketches that way. A thing I'd like to point out in terms of artists that make work that looks good, you'll notice that there is a lot of areas of black. So even with a black and white image, right? Lots of areas of black, some areas with no white detail, just pure black, makes for an attractive image. Lots of areas of color. So don't be afraid to like really load areas up with color or with black. if you're just using black and white. Lots of dark red everywhere. And will give a nice effect. So that should get you started. Play around that way. Again, don't zoom in too far. Sketch a lot. Bring in sketches. Work confidently. Work and then just work with what you got rather than Alt Control Alt Z all the time. Just erase it or reline it. Thanks.